activist out there. He's spending billions and billions of dollars on the anti-aging technology. He wants to live as long as possible. So, because we all know we need a little more Jeff Bezos in our lives, right? Let's see what's going on. Okay. Why China's shrinking population is a big deal. Yes, China is going to doom us all. Meanwhile, the plane crash in Nepal we know about. Moderna's fighting back. Nome is closing. That's a shame. That's a really good restaurant. I like how that makes the headlines. Well, it does good. It's stuff I care about, so I guess it's. I guess people know what I care about. Like, oh no, not Noma. Dollar death cost looms. Is the dollar about to fall another 10%? That's bullshit. I hate these. Who's putting that up? I'm going to talk to somebody about that. Value walk. That's bullshit. Hate it when they Warren Buffett, and it's not like Warren Buffett actually wrote anything or said anything. It's just that they're pulling it from things that he might have sort of said. He certainly didn't sit there and talk about 92 things to watch. Anyway, so, did we get to, I got really hung up on, we were doing the home sales and then the PPI came out, but we didn't talk about industrial production, which was shit. So what happened today? So today, mortgage applications, they bumped up. That's because rates went down, so people started applying to rather low rates. PPI, so the producer price index dropped 5%. That gave us a rally in the morning, but it's a stupid rally because you know it's like it's erratic numbers. Oh no, here I could show you that. Hang on a second. So, like look, here's PPI in August was negative. Then it goes back to 3 and 4 and 2 and -5. It's not a steady thing. So, you know, one piece of data out of the series isn't going to tell you anything. The core PPI also, well, it's the same, probably the same data set. Yeah, it's the same data set. Retail sales, awful, -1.1%. You do not want to see that in December, right? That's incredibly bad. So big, look at that. That's here's last December too. Last December was also not good. But you do not want to see retail sales that are down in November and December consecutively. That's bad. There's no spinning this. It's these are terrible numbers. I guess we look at the categories. So excluding auto, so it's not autos, durable goods. Why is durable goods blank? That's interesting. Oh, I see these are the durable goods. Building materials, auto parts. So auto parts are down again. It's not just one time. Again, auto parts are down, furniture down again. So guess what? The durable goods order report is going to suck. So watch it, you know, and so watch us be surprised about the durable goods order sucking. How could it be good when every category in durable goods is down? Then general merchandise is down, food is flat, gasoline is down. That's a big that hurts retail sales a lot when gasoline goes down like that. Clothing is down. Everything's down. But I mean, every category is down. That's really, really bad. So we'll see what that goes. You know, but again, that's what I was talking about this morning, right? When you are forced to spend every penny you have on housing, in the last 10 years, the gap between wages and housing, and don't forget, we're now at, what was the number? I forgot, I put the number. We're at 454 now. We are at what is it? 320, 360, 400, 450. We're here. That's where we are now. And wages are still basically down there. So we're up here. That's the gap between wages and housing. And that's why retail sales are negative. There's no money left. And rents, as you know, have gone crazy. So rents have gone crazy. New home prices have gone crazy. The interest rate you pay on a mortgage has gone crazy. So people can't refinance their homes. That's a big deal. We were getting by for the last few years on a lot of the same bullshit that put off the crisis of 2008. Because in 2007, the whole year of 2007, which was way early, I was like, I don't like this economy. I don't think this is sustainable. And of course, it stayed and stayed and stayed. And then all the way into 2008, we made it all the way until almost the fall in 2008 before things really collapsed. But all during 2008 too, and it was a pretty good rally during 2007 anyway. And I was just like, I don't like this economy. I don't see how these numbers can possibly be working, blah, 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 blah. And it turned out I was right, except I was way early. So this time I waited and bit my tongue all the way until August, and when I started the same guy, it gets to a point I can't take it anymore. If I see something coming, it's I'm good at seeing what's going to come. So I see it coming. The problem is the timing, right? So I know when things are hitting a breaking point. I know when things are unsustainable. We talked about this today with the debt. The debt of this country is unsustainable. It's mathematically unsustainable. It's going to happen, but how long can you put it off? Well, we're only is a quote, we're only 150% of our GDP in debt. Japan's 250% of their GDP in debt. So in theory, we can function at 250% of our GDP in debt, in theory. In reality, though, Japan is one country with a $5 trillion economy who's doing it. If a lot of other countries are doing the same thing, then where's the money going to come from? Then you're going to be devaluing money just to keep sustaining this bullshit, because you've constantly got to create more and more money to feed it. Because if we were 250% of our GDP in debt, that'd be 50, 60, 70 trillion dollars, let's say. So we'd be $70 trillion in debt. That's almost as much debt as the entire world has now. So how could we be by ourselves as in debt as the entire planet, and yet the entire planet would still have their debts and be expanding as well? But where would all this debt money come from? It has to be in some way created somewhere, and that then would cause a huge amount of inflation. So for us to keep going in debt at this level, Japan doing it by themselves is a problem, but the problem is they went from, let's say, 150% of their GDP, which is $5 trillion. So they went from 2.5 trillion in debt. I'm sorry, 150%. They went from 7.5 trillion in debt to $12.5 trillion in debt, right? That's 150. So they added $5 trillion of debt to the total global economy. But if we go from 32 trillion to $70 trillion, we're adding a lot more than $2 trillion of debt into the global economy, or 5 trillion, or whatever the hell the number is. So it doesn't work the same way. You can't just add $30 trillion of debt to the United States and $30 trillion worth of debt to Europe and $30 trillion worth of debt in China and Asia and so on and so forth. Where's it going to come from? How can that happen? It certainly can't happen if if there's the same amount of money in the world as there is now, and it all moves to debt. Where did it come from? Somebody has to lend it, right? So who's got it to lend? And if it's lent for that, then how the hell is anything else going to function? How are you going to buy a home when you're competing with countries who are borrowing money? So what do you have? You have rising rates. You have either a diminishing supply of money. So you have rising rates where everybody needs the same money, and money becomes very, very, very expensive and nothing can function. Or you are printing money to cover the debt, and therefore you have inflation. You're putting more money into circulation. There's no winning picture there. So here's the manufacturing indexes are collapsing and have been for a couple of years. Not because of the pandemic. That happened, and then they recovered, and then we're here, and now they're collapsing on their own. Without needing the pandemic, they're going back to the pandemic low. God forbid we have another pandemic, and we can all kiss our asses goodbye. And as I said yesterday in chat, we were talking about the Empire State Manufacturing Index, total disaster. Earnings have been a disaster so far. This is a disaster. The widening of the wealth gap, basically the lack of income and wages keeping up in any way, shape, or form with, and you could this don't forget, this is up here. This didn't move. This is up here. So, and that's only adding a couple of years of data. So with that problem, the same is true for college. Both of my daughters are in $70,000 colleges. I think you struggle. You do struggle because we already looked. I mean, almost any college I would have sent them to, that, you know, a reasonable good school in America, is going to be close to $50,000. So at that point, I was like, well, just go where you want then. I don't give a shit, because, you know, it's like you're not going to save. It's not like you can save a lot of money. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't go to Stanford because it was too expensive, and I stayed on the East Coast. And it was just if I went out west, I would have never been able to go home. Basically, I was paying for my own college back then also. So if I went out west, I would have basically just been broke and having no fun. And I would have, you know, as it was, I worked constantly. I worked all the time. And you know, during school, I worked during school all the time. I worked basically full-time jobs. I worked all the time when I was home. I did manage to do some traveling, but that was because I worked so hard. I made enough money to be able to take a few trips off. But overall, though, I really worked hard to pay for my college. I didn't come out with too much debt. Had student loans, but paid them off pretty quickly. But you know, it was possible back then. But if, you know, this chart would apply to student loans. This chart would apply to So this chart would apply to student loans. This chart would apply to medical expenses. All the necessities are being squeezed out of people. And so you don't get to make those choices. You don't get to say, this is what I want to spend my money on. No, this is what you'll pay to live. This is what you'll pay for your gasoline. This is what you'll pay for your energy expenses. This is what you're going to pay for your food costs. Everything is going crazy except wages. And that's why nobody gives a shit. Because the people who run the country, as long as they're making money, they don't care. And it's true. Anybody's making $500,000 a year, and that's the cutoff. If you want to be in the top 1%, you have to be making $500,000 a year. If you're making $500,000 a year, you really don't care about any of this stuff. You know, you might bitch about the cost of a house, but the cost of a house, you know, $1 million home, it's still just 2 years' salary for you. And the point of that is, if you can afford a 2-year salary at the cost of your home compared to 5-year salary for somebody else to buy a $500,000 home, and that's lucky. You have to make $100,000 for a $500,000 home to be 5 years salary, and that's getting close to the median price of a home these days. So people who aren't making six-figure salaries could be looking at 10 years to pay off their homes. So if you're well off and you can buy $1 million home, and that's because $1 million home generally, almost anywhere in the country, you can buy a decent home for $1 million bucks. So, you know, when you're in the top 1%, you can get a nice place pretty much wherever, unless you're in New York or something like that, but you can get a nice place anywhere you want, get it, you know, and it costs you 2 years salary, and then the rest, but then the rest of the things don't cost you 2 years salary, like college doesn't cost, you know, when your kid goes to college, it only costs you 20% of your salary per year, not even. That's not true for somebody who makes $70,000 and they send their kid to a $50,000 school. That means they've got to put aside, that means a huge portion of money has to be put aside for college, money has to be put aside for retirement, so on and so forth. You don't have those problems when you're making $500,000 a year. And that's why it's a different life for those people. That's why these things don't bother them at all. And they have all this money on the side to invest. And the fact that they can invest means, what is their interest? Their interest is that companies make money, not that people have a good life. When you're in the top 1%, your interest is drastically aligned with corporations making the most profit possible. You are in the investing class and you therefore just want to maximize the profitability of companies. And even if the action somewhat seems diminishing, you say, well, you know, even if you're rich, you don't want that because it raises prices. That's not true because you don't give a shit. You don't. Okay, I go to Walmart, there's no prices. I don't know what things cost in Walmart. I mean, some stuff has prices, but you know, I'm telling you, probably half the stuff, more than half the stuff doesn't even have a price on it. And nobody cares. Nobody gets a surprise. It's a surprise when you get to the checkout counter. You find out what it was when you get there. You know, and even if I go to a regular supermarket, I don't pay attention. It's like if I want something, I buy it, you know? It's like I know I went to what is it? Publix. Yeah, I went to Publix the other day, and every single thing has a price on it, which was weird to me. And then things are on sale. I'm like, ooh, sale. But it's like there's not a lot of sales at Whole Foods. But yeah, it's a different, you know, it's a different world, and it's not the same life at all. We're not having the same life as people in the working class. And we don't have the same interests as people in the working class. And the whole point of democracy is to make sure that the government is looking out for the people. Not us, not the people in the 1%. We can look out for ourselves. The government is supposed to look out for the people. We've completely screwed that over. We don't have a democracy. We have an oligarchy or a kleptocracy, depending on how you want to look at it. But we have a government that is buying for the people who pay for it, which is us, which is people in the top 1%. It's not good. So, and it's not good for the long-term health of the economy. It's like we're to the point where I mean, this was still a democracy. I mean, this was still, you know, this was still America. When housing prices were 2 times what people could afford, it was America. When they were 3 times what people can afford, it was America. At 5 times what people can afford, at 5 times people's salary, it's no longer a functioning democracy, is it? We've taken away the right to shelter from almost everybody, from the right to affordable shelter, from the right to affordable Medicare, healthcare, from the right to from the right to an education. We have just basically let those things be taken away from the vast majority of the people in this country. And and while we've been doing that, there's been this incredible amount of brainwashing from the right, where they basically tell people this is now what a functioning democracy is. This is what they now believe is right for America, which is the same bullshit that they used to tell the peasants in the Middle Ages with the church. That was the democracy. That was the propaganda back then, was that the church. It was like blessed are the meek and blessed are the poor and blessed are this and that. It's like yeah, you guys are all blessed. Good job being poor. Don't riot or anything. Just go to church on Sunday. We'll give you some free crackers. It is not good. And it's not healthy. And that's the thing, though. That's what we don't understand, is that we forget that this is how a society eventually falls apart. Anyway, so I mean, if you see how drastic this is, look what happened from the middle of February here. We went up 20% for the last year in home prices, year over year change, right? For a year, 20%, I'm sorry, 2 years. So it's 2 consecutive years of 20% increases. So it goes from 120 to 144. 100, 20% more than 100 is 120, and 20% more than that is 144. So it goes from 100 to 144 in 2 years. That's drastically, and that's why this is up here now. But this has not changed. This has gone to 90. It's gone up almost 10%. So this is up here now. So this is up here, and this is up here. It's not sustainable. And it's a real disaster. And look at the supply of homes. So somebody's buying these homes. Even at this price, even as these prices are surging, people are gobbling up the available homes. Now, part of it is also the supply is not coming on the market. In addition to a lack of building, right? There's also a problem with supply. And the lack of building, again, that goes back to my beach example I was talking about this morning, is there's only so much beachfront property, right? The rich people don't give a shit if you're building a housing development in Wisconsin. Nobody's looking for that. Okay, so the rich people aren't looking to buy those. But when you're in an area like I live in Delray Beach in Florida, every single thing that's got a view of the ocean is gone. Everything between here and Miami, gone. You can't get anything decent for any price because it's all gotten scooped up by the people who've had money handed to them in the last 2 years, which are the richest people. So the richest people have been handed what was the number? $26 trillion. The richest people have gotten $26 trillion more dollars in the last 2 years. That's 80 million people got $26 trillion, which is, now this is each person in the top 1%, right? So 80 million people in the top 1% got $26 trillion. That's $325,000 per person. So the families of the wealthy got $1 million, let's say, each. And the families of the poor got $2,000 each, or $6,000 per family. So top 1% got $1 million. Bottom 99% people, $6,000. And they said, go shopping, go buy your dream house to each group. So of course, obviously, all the beachfront properties are gone, all the really nice homes are gone, all the good stuff is gone, and everybody else is left looking for scraps, basically. And even the scraps are expensive because there's not much of anything left. Because the people who didn't buy beachfront homes instead invested in, some other form of real estate, or the market, of course. That's why the market got so expensive as well. Because people had nothing else to do with their money, so they put it into homes, and they put it into real estate. But they scoop up the market in homes. There's no availability of homes, and then the rents start going up because there's no homes available to rent either. And homes doesn't mean house; it means any dwelling. And how is the Fed helping this? In no way, shape, or form are they helping any of this stuff. They're causing it. There's only 110 million homes in America, and 80 people were just given $325,000 each to buy them. So, and it's not fixable, because if you look at the supply of homes, right, we're short. We usually have, see this number here, there's 2 million homes. So we usually have about 2 million homes. Now we're down to 1 million homes on the market. And if you want to fix that, since we usually build 1.3 million or 1.2 million homes per year, that's just to maintain the current level of 110 million houses. In other words, once every 100 years, you have to replace the homes. That makes sense, right? So once every 100 years, we have to build a replacement home just to maintain steady population, steady amount of housing. We fall behind, and then that creates, now the houses still fall apart that are 100 years old. So that decreases the amount of homes available on the market as well. The other problem with homes availability on the market is that the people who are in a home now can't sell even if they want to, because they are trading in a existing 3% mortgage or 2% mortgage for a 6% mortgage. So it means it's extremely expensive for someone to sell their home, pay taxes, and then try to take the money that they get out of that to now put it into a much more expensive home with much higher interest rates. It's so unless you have to sell your home, people aren't really selling their homes. And again, decreasing the supply availability on the market. The builders would like to build the homes, but they also have to pay interest up front and whatever to just start the process of building a home. And the other thing is, of course, the like I said, desirable locations. They don't necessarily have, those lots also being bid up and taken and so on and so forth. So the builders would have to start building and pushing hard for years to build many, many, many more homes for years in order to stay ahead and to start catching up on the lack of existing homes. That can't happen though, because you already saw what went on with lumber prices. There was like the tiniest increase in home building 2 years ago, and lumber prices went insane. And again, boom, where's the affordability? And obviously not just lumber, but everything else that you have to put into a home goes crazy. So especially when we have supply chain issues and so on and so forth, you don't want to get into that. And somebody in chat just asked me about international paper. I like international paper because it's also a lumber play. But that's not the lumber that they make. So I like Weyerhaeuser better. We settled on them in one of our portfolios. But international paper, the thing about international paper, there's less use of paper. It's being used more in packaging now. So it's a 50-50 thing. Anyway, so PPI, that brings us back to what we were talking about in the first place, which is PPI, the producer price index dropped considerably, but dropped considerably to what? It dropped considerably to 6%. 6%, the Fed wants 2%. See? Oh no, it's down here. 2%. This is 6%. Nowhere near where the Fed wants it. So why would the Fed stop? They might stop because they say they might stop for the same reason you stop hitting a cue ball when you're playing pool, right? You hit the ball and it's going the way you want it to go. And then you stop hitting it, right? You don't hit it and hit it and hit it to keep it going. You hit it and it goes and it does, and it looks like it's going to do what you want, and you're happy already. You don't even have to see what's going to happen. You're like, oh, that went right where I want it to go. So the Fed may be looking at this that way and saying, well, these kind of rates are causing this to happen. But they need more than one data point to be sure that they'd have to stop, because what caused this drop? What caused this drop? This is June 22, not long ago. So what caused this drop was a hike and a hike and a hike and a hike. So they don't know that this momentum is going to keep going if they stop hiking. They have no idea. This is what happens when they do keep hiking. But it doesn't mean that it's going to stop hiking. So now, instead of thinking like a cue ball, think of it like when you're turning the nozzle on your hose in your backyard, right? You turn it and turn it and turn it, and you don't stop turning it because the water's getting lower, right? You don't stop until it stops. Of course, it's getting less every time you turn it, because internally there's some little thing closing off the water, but it doesn't get less every time you turn it. I mean, it doesn't keep getting less if you stop turning it. You have to keep turning it until you get to where you are. So which is it? And I'm telling you, the Fed does not know, and we do not know. Nobody knows, and there's not enough data to figure it out. So what the Fed will do is they will possibly lower, tighten less, possibly tighten less. They're almost certainly not going to not tighten at all. That seems just silly because they don't. It's if you can still tighten, then you should still tighten. So they'll possibly tighten less. They may go with one more hike because they'd rather get it over with. They'd rather be sure they're done. And they don't want to over tighten, but they want to get it right, and they need to get it done quickly rather than less because if anything happens, this is the other thing you don't realize. If anything happens and the Fed needs to lower rates, they have to have a base to lower from. If there's a 9/11 attack, or if Putin nukes somebody, or if whatever else happens to the economy, if we get hit hard with a recession, the Fed's got to be able to lower rates a half a point, a quarter, 3/4 of a point, whatever, quickly to stop the collapse of the economy. And if they can't do that, then they're going to be in trouble. So they have to have the firepower on the sidelines to do it, just like we want to have cash on the sidelines to hold our portfolios together. Okay, so that was PPI. Then retail sales. Okay, they were minus 1% in November. We said this, right? We're minus 1% in November, minus 1.1% here. So retail sales, total disaster. Ex auto, same disaster. Actually, ex auto got worse. So that's really, really bad for the retailers, right? And then adding insult to injury here, industrial production is massively below. It was minus 6. And they said, oh, it's going to get so much better. It's going to be plus 1%, and that came in at minus 7, minus 0.7. That's terrible. That's why I was like dumbfounded. Look at this. I mean, that's why I was dumbfounded by what was going on this morning. I was like, why is this happening? And also capacity utilization is down at 78.8%. That means they're shutting down. It's all the same chart. That means they're shutting down. The industrial production is bad enough that they're shutting down the factories because they're saying, oh, we don't even need these factories to be running. There's no sense in running factories if nobody wants anything. So retail sales the demand for the goods is no good. The industrial production has been scaled back, and they're shutting down the factories and closing off the cap utilization because they're not even utilizing what they have. That means we have no need to build new production. There's no need to this. And then the question is, what are we doing all this hiring for? Now, don't forget that the Fed wants that, though. The Fed wants the companies to start changing their mind about all these jobs, because right now companies have been trying to get 10 million open jobs. And the Fed wants to see that number come down so that there's less pressure on wages, because the Fed doesn't want high wages. They don't want, they want to make sure that wages stay low so that corporations can make lots of money. They don't give a shit about the people. They care about the companies. Oh, we got the Beige book coming out soon. So we'll take a look at what they have to say as well. So I should save my voice more. Anyway, exhausting. All right, let's see what else. So what I talked about today. All right, so we talked about that stuff. La 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 la. And then we talked in chat. Oh, here's some more debt stuff. I don't know how well you can see this, but here's Greece, 200% of their GDP in debt. Japan, 260, and this is last year, so they're more like 270, 280 now. Here's us, 133, that says. Barbados, 138. So for us to be in this circle, all we have to do is go from 133 to 138. We're there. Our GDP is, let's say it's 25 trillion. So it's going to be 32 trillion divided by 25 trillion. Well, that says 128. All right, so anyway, so this says 133. So, all right, so we are about, so we're maintaining a little bit less than 138. 138 is a killer. So a little bit more. If our GDP doesn't keep up or our debt gets higher, either way, we jump into this circle, which will make it kind of crowded. The inner circle of horrendous debt. We're just outside of it now. And here we got France and Belgium and Cyprus and Canada and Singapore. You know, these are all countries that are over 100% of their GDP in debt. And if you want to get outside, who's outside? Hong Kong, no debt. Kuwait, Congo. I don't know how Congo has no debt. That's weird. Micronesia has no debt. Russia has 17% debt. Estonia has 20% debt. Solomon Islands, which don't we own them? 20% debt. Botswana, Haiti. Haiti has not much debt. Bulgaria, Kazakhstan, oil. Kosovo, Luxembourg. So wait, which one of these places would I live in? I wouldn't mind Luxembourg. I don't think I want to live in the Solomon Islands. Micronesia, that's not bad. Micronesia I could live in. The Marshall Islands, not so bad. Kuwait, I don't think I want to live in Kuwait. Hong Kong, Hong Kong's like way down there. You know what? Hong Kong might be the answer, guys. I can't tell what that one is, otherwise I'd say. Anyway, so you really kind of want to start taking things like this into consideration when you're thinking about where you're going to go when you run out of this country, because things are going to hit the fan at some point, and you want to be able to go somewhere that's going to be able to deal with the crisis. And these countries that have low debt loads are going to be a lot more interesting than the ones we're in now. And RN said that, we got to refinance the debt and so on and so forth. But I was doing the math here, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do, because if you take the debt we have now, which is 31.5 trillion officially, we're paying 520 billion in interest. We're rolling over about 1/3 of our, because all of our debt is short term. Our debt's like 2-year debt, 2-year notes and 3-year notes are the most popular forms of debt. And we have 1-year notes, 10-year, we have 6-month notes. So the government does a lot of short-term rollover debt. They did not, for whatever reason, when debt was 2%, the government did not lock in the debt for 30 years at 2%. They kept all their debt really short-term. Why? Well, at the time, the 2-year notes were 0.5% or less than 1%. So what the frick? Oh, that's outside. Holy crap. They're building something. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, okay. So the debt is rolling over very quickly. So basically, in 3 years, we're going to be at $1.3 trillion in debt service. And that's if the rates stay where they are now. So there's no solution now to lock in the debt. We could have locked in the debt at the rate we're paying now. So we're only paying 1.6% interest on the average debt. So we have 520 billion in interest on 31.5 trillion. That's 1.6%. That's what we're currently paying. But you can't get anything lower than 4% now. So the time to lock something in is long gone. We could have locked in 2% any time in the last few years. We could have easily locked in 2% for 30 years. And I've said many, many times, who in their right mind would take a 30-year note for 2%, but people were doing it for years. So we could have rolled over all of our debt into 30-year notes, and then we wouldn't have a problem to deal with for 30 years. Now, though, that crisis, the fact that we didn't do that is now going to cost us our entire national debt. So our debt is going to go up $1 trillion for the next 30 years. Well, unless, if it stays the same. And that's going to be 100% mistake on our national debt. So that right there is going to be it. And then don't forget though that all this the extra money that we're carrying, the extra trillion a year we're going to need to borrow to pay the interest on our debt becomes more debt. And I had pulled up the national debt clock. This is where we're getting this from. So there's the interest on our debt right now. There's our debt right now. Here's our deficit right now. So we're already running a 1.3, $1.4 trillion deficit. And so what's the solution? There's not much. This is going to go up. This is going to go up considerably, like 3 times. It's going to be $1.3 trillion. If this stays here, this goes to $1.3 trillion. So where's the extra $1 trillion going to come from? It's going to go added to there. That's going to make that number bigger, which is going to make this number bigger. And it's going to cycle around. But when you're talking about, so then you say, well, what are we going to cut? You're going to be adding $2.4 trillion a year to the deficit, unless you cut what? Unless you either cut the spending. And how are you going to cut all of our federal spending from $6 trillion to under $4 trillion to stop increasing the debt? How? 1/3? Look at the numbers. 1.5, 1.2. That's $3 trillion. Half of this money is Social Security, Medicare. Another trillion, 1/3 of what's left, 1/3 of what you call discretionary spending, is military. That leaves $2 trillion of non-military discretionary spending that's up for debate, and we need to cut over $2 trillion to balance the budget. Okay, that's why, and you are going to be brainwashed like crazy for the next year during this budget battle and all year, in fact, into the next election, because the only thing that you can do other than raise taxes is cut Social Security and Medicare. Because you can't really cut education any further. It's already underfunded. Transportation is already underfunded. There's all these departments. We need money to run this country. It's a big country. It's got a lot of people in it. We're not really spending that much money on it to run it. In fact, let's see, we're spending $2 trillion discretionary dollars, non-defense, not including defense, which some may call discretionary and some won't, but saying $2 trillion, that's billion, trillion divided by 330, to be fair, 330 million people. We're spending $6,000 per person on everything else, like the schools, the police, the environmental cleanup, the electrical grid, the waterways, the highways, blah, blah, blah. That's how much we're spending per person, $6,000 a year to maintain the entire country. And so we either cut that, or we cut this, or we cut that. That's obviously not going to happen. So we either cut this and that, or we cut that, or we raise this. But think about raising that. Now, if we raise this $2 trillion federal tax revenue, that would be 50% more than we're paying now. Do you want to pay 50% more taxes to balance the budget? No, I don't either. I'm a liberal and I don't want to pay that. Now, of course, realistically, there are people who aren't pulling their share because we pay 2.6 trillion. Oh, by the way, also it's really 100% more in income taxes because this is a total revenue. But if you want to get $2 trillion out of this side, you got to double income taxes, basically. All right, payroll taxes, double those. Oh, look at corporate taxes. Corporate's only $400 million. I'm sorry, $400 billion. You would have to you triple that, and it's not going to make a dent. But really, that's what needs to happen: is corporations have to start paying money. That's one of the biggest problems we have: is we don't, corporations don't pay enough taxes. That's insane. Look at that. Out of $4.6 trillion of revenue, corporations contribute less than 10%. And they make the money. That's how we get paid. We get our money because the corporations pay us, and they sure as shit don't pay us half their money, yet they pay 1/10 of the taxes. That's insane. And the fact that we're not collecting the money from the corporations is why we have this deficit. If we had collected double from the corporation, we collected 400 billion more, right? So 400 billion more, right? That's a big number, right? 400 billion more for the last 20 years. There's $8 trillion. It's really been since Reagan. It's really been 40 years since Reagan that we haven't been collecting this money. It's really $16 trillion, like half of our national debt comes from that, but it's more than half because the national debt then causes the interest payments of another 500 billion. So another 500 billion a year is caused by the extra national debt, or half of that anyway. So the bottom line is, if you include the interest on the debt that's been accumulating, had we never done what Reagan did, which was cut corporate taxes down by more than half, had we never done that, we would today have a balanced budget, and not any debt, basically, because that debt includes the interest on the debt. So you understand what I'm saying? So they know if we didn't collect corporate taxes, and then every time we don't collect them, we have a deficit. We have a deficit, we then start paying interest on the deficit. And then we don't collect corporate taxes again, and we have more of a deficit. Then we have interest on the deficit, blah, blah, blah. And it keeps feeding on itself. So it's almost entirely responsible. The lack of collecting corporate taxes is almost entirely responsible for the entire deficit. And the remedy, the logical remedy to this whole thing, is to start collecting corporate taxes properly. And for that, we could do like a VAT tax or something like that. Now, the Republicans want to do something more like a national sales tax. That's not the same thing as a VAT tax. A VAT tax specifically makes sure the corporation is charged for their internal dealings. A sales tax only charges the end user. But the VAT is paid at each process whenever value is added in the manufacturing process. So in other words, like Intel makes the chip, but the people they buy the chip ingredients from pay a VAT when they sell the ingredients. Then Intel sells the chip. They pay a VAT on the chip. Then the company that makes the computer and adds more value then pays a VAT on the value they add to the computer. So by the time it gets to the end user doesn't have to pay some ridiculous tax. What the Republicans want to do is they're taking that concept, which, by the way, I propose, you guys, if you've been here long enough, you know I've talked about this forever, that's the solution. Because we have a $25 trillion economy. Does it say that anywhere? Is there any evidence of this? Doesn't really, oh yeah, there is. GDP 25 trillion. So we have a $25 trillion GDP, and we need $6 trillion, right, to live. Therefore, we need a 20% or a little more, 25. We need a 25% tax on all goods and services. Now, what the Republicans want to do is have a 25% tax at the point of sale. So the consumer at the end pays the whole thing. That's not what a VAT does. If you had a VAT, that money would be paid internally until it gets to the consumer and then sold. And it's still included in the price, and you can still argue the consumer is paying it, but the reality is it's more evenly distributed to the corporations if you do it that way. And would things be more expensive? Yes, things would be more expensive. But you know what? Realistically, they should be more expensive. We have too much stuff. That's one of the reasons there's so much waste. We have too much stuff. Things are there are things we consume that we shouldn't be consuming, and that's causing part of the waste. These homes filled with junk, people taking up much more space than they need, people heating and cooling much more space than they should be occupying. These are the problems that are destroying the planet. You know, kids with 25 pairs of sneakers. Why do kids have 25 pairs of sneakers? Why do they need this? Why do women need 100 shoes? That's always a mystery. You know, there's things, and people collect things for no reason. It used to be you would have a prize thing. You know, my grandfather had some porcelain figures and things like that, but he didn't have a shelf full of superhero action figures. It's a meaningless industry. You know, there's so much stuff that we have. If you look around your house and look at the stuff that you have, and you think about, do I really need these things? Was that necessary? And all the stuff that's not necessary could fill another house. You know, when I was in college, I had a futon and a computer. I needed my computer. I needed my printer. Didn't really though. We could have. I mean, if we had a printer on the floor, I wouldn't need a printer. But I didn't have that. But I needed my computer. I needed my printer. I had my desk. I had my lamp. I had my mini fridge. I had my wok, which I made everything in. I had an electric wok. I loved it. I cooked anything you can imagine. I could cook in an electric wok. To this day, I have a nice big wok I use all the time. But yeah, and not a lot of utensils, not a lot of dishes, not a lot of stuff. And it all fits in this little one little box that I lived in college. And when push comes to shove, that's really what you need. You know, we got lots of people, we got millions of people in prison, they live like that too. It's not much different than a college dorm. And just to some extent, we need to scale our lives back. There's not a winning solution to the global problem we have right now without everybody scaling back somewhat. And there's not a solution to this either. So what I'm saying is, yeah, we have to bite the bullet now. This has already been done. 40 years of way under taxing corporations. It's already happened. We have to now start fixing it. And if we don't take it seriously and start fixing it, we're going to be screwed. Now, what the Republicans want to do is they want to say, well, don't tax our poor corporations. Let's take the money away from these people. Let's stop giving out this money. But it's not. This money isn't theirs to take. It was given every time you got a paycheck. It was taken out of your paycheck. Your whole life of working, you paid into this fund. And not only that, this fund has already been robbed, because if they had actually properly invested that money and gotten a proper rate of return for it, what they did is they would use that as a slush fund, and sort of like whenever they needed money, they would take it at very, very low rates and put it out. Even if rates were like 5% or 6% in the bank, they would instead take the money and they would lend it out at like 1%, 2% for short-term loans to whoever they needed to. So that money, and then we would have the money not collecting interest, so on and so forth. So basically, that money should almost be double where it is now if they had invested it properly. And there would be no issue at all with whether or not Social Security. Just think about it, you're not getting much back. You put in, what's the number? 100,000 at 6%, and then your employee said, let's say it's 12%. So effectively, and we're going to say this was adjusted for inflation, right? So it's going to be, the cutoff is about $100,000 and it's 12%. So it's $12,000 a year is your Social Security cap, right? So if you're a high wage earner, it's $12,000 a year, and you work for 40 years, so there should be $480,000 in your particular Social Security plan. So for you, if you're a $100,000 earner your whole life and you put away the max, you should have $480,000 put away in Social Security on your behalf. Again, adjusted for inflation. So forget what it should have earned in interest and everything else. Let's just say that's all there is, $480,000. Should be better, because if you've been putting that money in and accumulating interest over the years, you should be doing way better than that. But even if it's $480,000, so now you turn 65 and you're not getting 10% interest, or 5% would be $24,000 a year, right? 5% would be $24,000 a year. So if you got 5% return, you would basically be getting your max Social Security withdrawal back out of the program. And then if you get, but that only makes sense if you get it for a huge amount of time. But in reality, what's happening is you're going to get back your 30, let's say you're back about $30,000 a year, right? But only for, even if it's for 20 years, even if you live to be 85, when you die, the principal should still be there. But then they take it, right? They don't give it back to you, they take it. So if they were running the fund properly, it should be swimming in money. It should be absolutely blobbed out with money. It's not being, it never was run properly. They stole a lot of the money. They misappropriated. They didn't put it to good use. They didn't manage it well. And that's where it is. And that then causes it to become a crisis at this point. It's exhausting. So anyway, I mean, like I said this morning, somebody's got to, the whole thing has to be scrapped and rethought and redone. And soon. We don't have all the time in the world to put this off anymore. Anyway, all right, so that's where we are. What else do we talk about here? So it's very depressing, unfortunately. All right. Anyhow, so then we go back to, we got some big problems. We really got to start doing some stuff about it. That's all I got to say. So where are we? How do the markets look? Where's my futures? Well, it's not so terrible. So it's another 400 down day though on the Dow. That's not really good, right? The S&P has stopped at a 1% loss. So we're down about 1% across the board. Not terribly terrible, but certainly not good. And we seem to be holding up here, but now we failed the 4,000 line, so we got to now we got to try to climb all the way back to 4,000 to try to get some traction again. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not good. So that's sad. Energy, oil fell off considerably, right? That's good actually. Natural gas, really ugly on natural gas. But again, I think it's a good time to get in. We're already in on natural gas, so it's not going to help us. We're in from the same thing I had last week. Yeah, another ugly loss, $10,000 or whatever it is, $8,000. So break even 352, but it's probably a little bit higher than that. It's probably, I think 390 something is break even right now. That's including all the rolling we've done and everything else. So, but anyway, we're in it for the long haul, so we'll see what happens. Certainly not pleased about that. And then yesterday we started doing our portfolio reviews. Oh, 2 o'clock, beige book. Oh, there's no oil today because of Monday's holiday. Beige book, beige book. Ooh. What? I'm not gonna, my voice is not that good, so I'm not gonna do too much reading. You'll have to read along at home. Let's just see what it says. Overall, unchanged. Remember, there's 13 districts, so when you see numbers, you got to do the math. 5 overall activity, 6 no change, or slight declines. So that's 11 accounted for. One cited significant decline. What happened on the 13th? Okay, hang on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, there's only 12 districts. I thought there were 13 districts. I don't know if they changed it or what's going on here. Okay, I don't like this. How many Federal Reserve banks are there? Is that a question? 12. Oh. Why do they have 13 in my head? 12. All right, so I'm going to change. I'm wrong. All right, so there's 12. Keep that in your head. So now it's going to make sense. So 5, slight or modest, none of these are strong, right? Increases. 6, no change or slight. So basically, yeah, nothing happened. 1 cited significant decline. I'd really like to know which one was cited significant decline. On balance, contacts generally expected little growth in the months ahead. Consumer spending increased slightly, but it didn't, with some retailers reporting a more robust sales over the holidays. Other retailers noted high inflation reduced customers' purchasing power, particularly among low and moderate income households. Exactly what my premise is, right? You're being forced to spend your money on shelter. You're being forced to spend your money on utilities, on fuel. You're being forced to spend your money on medical care. You're being forced to spend your money on education. That doesn't leave money for discretionary. Other retailers noted high inflation continued to reduce purchasing power, particularly low and moderate. That's what you said. Auto sales were flat. Some dealers noted increased activity had boosted sales. Tourism contacts reported moderate to robust activity, augmented by strong holiday travel. Manufacturers indicated activity declined modestly, and now manufacturing is a disaster. So when they say modestly, that's interesting. Reported supply chains disruptions at ease. Housing markets continue to weaken. Sales and construction declining across districts, and we're seeing this in Europe also. We're seeing massive declines in housing. Commercial real estate slowed on average, with more notable weakening in the office market, and that's why people are freaking out about trying to get workers back to the offices now, because it's going into a state of permanent decline. Non-financial service firms, and don't forget, companies are paying for these offices. These employers have incredibly expensive real estate in cities and things like that that are way more money than you would ever pay for an apartment. If you let things settle down, a lot of this real estate stuff would sort itself out, because all these offices could be converted into housing units, and then you would have more housing availability and lower rents in the cities, and the corporations wouldn't need as many people, more people could work at home, so on and so forth. It could all be fixed over time, but the problem is the dislocation is very expensive and very painful. I mean, I've always thought, when I lived in New York City, how stupid it was for people who live in New York City to get up and commute downtown and fight traffic. It would literally take you an hour to go a mile in New York City. And so you spend an hour there and an hour back commuting in New York City. And by the way, the reason so many people in New York City go to happy hour after work is because there's no point in trying to go home. I mean, you can take the subway or whatever or walk, but there's no way to take a car or a taxi anywhere in the middle of Manhattan during rush hour. It just is not even, there's not even a point to attempting it. So obviously you go to a bar and wait it out. You wait for the traffic to go away. That's what the whole point of happy hour is. I'm sure a lot of cities are like that, but New York especially. It's just pointless to attempt to do anything other than drink after work. So, you just go to the nearest place to have a drink and sit down for a while. Which is a shame because, you've just been sitting to work for 8 hours, and the last thing you don't really feel like going to a bar and sitting some more. But anyway, so it always seems so stupid to me because the reality is I got a desk at home, I got a computer at home, I can do everything I'm doing. I got a phone at home, I can do everything I'm doing in the office at home. So why do I have to go to the office and sit there where I'm more distracted and other stuff is going on? Why are you paying for that space for me to be there? It makes no sense. If you need me for a meeting, I can easily come in for the meeting, but I don't need to sit at the goddamn desk all day long waiting to see if there's going to be a meeting. That's just stupid. If companies instead incentivize their employees to live in the city and said, or they had set meeting days where they said this day you're going to come into the office, and they had a pool of desks available or something like that, that could be done. The whole thing of having this where all your employees have to show up and work and sit at a desk and sit in a cubicle, which is miserable. When the environment could easily be replicated somewhere else, that makes no sense. And we figured that out. We were forced to figure that out over COVID. It's not coming back. As much as they keep telling you it's all coming back, it's like, no, it's not. It was always stupid. And the more electronics developed, the more the internet developed, stupider it became. But the problem these companies have right now is they've got these gigantic empty offices that they can't unload, they can't do anything with it, and it's costing them money. And you can fire the employees, but you can't reduce your space. And there's not people looking for new office space either. Anyway, non-financial service firms, commercial real estate activity slow. Non-financial service firms experience stable demand on the balance. Bankers reported that residential mortgage demand remained weak. Higher borrowing costs began to dampen commercial lending. Energy activity continues to increase moderately, and agricultural conditions were generally unchanged or improving. Labor. Employment continued to grow at a modest to moderate pace for most districts. Only one district reported a slight decline in employment, and one other reported no change. So it's not doing what the Fed wants. Only one district reported a decline, and one other said no change. That means every other district, 10 other districts out of 12, said that employment continued to grow. It's kind of weird because retail sales are down and office rents are down and so on and so forth. I'm not sure. I guess everybody's kind of understaffed. Many firms hesitated. Oh, I'm sorry. Firms continue to report difficulty filling open positions. Many firms hesitate to lay off employees, even as demand for their goods and services slowed. See, that's weird. And plan to reduce headcount. I guess because it's been so hard to hire people that just because demand slowed down, they don't want to let anybody go because then they're like, it's a nightmare to find anybody. They're trying to hire people. Now they're like, oh God, maybe we have too many people, but then think, well, if we lay these people off and we can't get them back, we're totally screwed. So yeah, I can see where they're in a tough spot. Wage pressures remained elevated. And again, don't forget I have this theory, which is so far supported, that wages are still so far behind that this is not going to go away. We haven't let the wages balance out. The Fed has attacked the wages and kept them down without letting them move forward. There's been not enough gain in wages to make up. We have to make up that gap. And it's a big gap. It's almost like salaries need to well, it is. Minimum wage can't be, people have to be making $15 an hour minimum wage. If people are making $15 minimum wage, that means somebody working at a professional level should be making double, 30 bucks an hour. And that means a secretary should be making around $50,000. Then you can do the math on everybody else. But that's how far behind wages are right now. The janitor should be making, how much is $15 an hour? $600 a week is $30,000 a year. So the janitor should be making at least $30,000 a year. That's how it should be. The janitor and the cleaning lady and people like that should be making $30,000 a year. The girl at Starbucks, the baristas, the McDonald's people, they should all be making $30,000 a year. If somebody's in your office, they better be making $50,000 a year. Anybody sitting there walking into an office and doing a professional job who has an education should be making at least $50,000 a year. And that's obvious because you're paying $250,000 for the education. You can't pay $250,000 for an education and get paid $30,000 a year. You will never pay that off. And then how are you going to go get your house? And how are you going to get a car? And so it's insane. So people are ridiculously underpaid. And until that's fixed, none of these other problems are going to really go away. Selling prices increased at modest to moderate pace. And the reason, by the way, that Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and everybody, they can lay people off. Everybody wants those jobs. Those are $200,000 jobs, $300,000 jobs. So there's always people who want those jobs. They don't have problems finding people. They have problems beating people away. Selling prices increased at modest to moderate paces in most districts. Many said that the pace increase is slow from that of recent reporting periods. Manufacturers may just reported continued easing in freight costs and prices for commodities, including steel and lumber. Although some said input costs remained elevated, many retailers noted increased difficulty passing through the cost increases. That's what's happening now. We're getting pushback on prices from consumers. And it's basically where they're like, we can't afford this shit. And that's what I was going to say. It's I was talking about Publix. That's what I noticed at the supermarket is people are buying a lot of, you see these sales items and they're getting pulled down. You see when you walk by the shelves, those sales items are getting chewed into pretty fast because people are shopping for the cheaper stuff. They're looking for what's on sale. I'll buy that. Suggesting a price sensitive. Oh yeah, like I saw their beef. I saw beef was $13.54. It was $13.54 ribeye. I was like, I'm not paying that because it's too cheap. I was just like, I just can't imagine that tastes good. It was so cheap that I just didn't want to avoid it. That was one sale price I noticed the other day. I was like, holy shit, that's a good price. So think this, but there are lots and lots of things on sale. Suggesting greater price sensitivity on the part of the consumers. In addition, some retailers offered more discounts and promotions than they had a year ago to move merchandise, clear out inventories on the balance. Contacts across districts expect future price growth to moderate further in the year ahead. Ooh, okay. Highlights. Boston, business activity flat. I don't like the new style. They used to be much more in depth on each thing and then talked about all the districts like they did above, except on each item. I don't like what they're doing now. It's terrible. So this is not very useful. New York economic activity trend contracted, especially sharp decline in manufacturing. Job growth. Oh, it's funny. We saw that, right? That's the Empire State Manufacturing Index. That's why I said it was a disaster, right? Oh, I wonder what Philly says, because we get Philly next. Business activity appeared to decline slightly during the Beige Book, holding steady. Wage and price inflation continues to subside. Employment continued to rise. Hiring more cautious. Sentiment fell. Expectations improved. All right. Anyway, Oh, God. Here we go. Here's better stuff. Although that's all. This is all from Boston. Oh, I see. Now they're doing the more. Now they're doing the more in-depth stuff, but on a bank-by-bank basis. That's so annoying. Ugh. Anyway. So overall, yeah, you can see the Beige Book is certainly being reflected back in the data that we're seeing today. And the Fed is not going to be happy if the labor market's still tight, and the labor market is still tight. And let's see when we get more information on that. Beige Book, that clock. Where did I have that economic stuff? BRIEF, briefing.com. All right, calendars. Oh, this is economic. When do we get? Oh, well, we get the next week we're going to get durable goods. We're going to get the GDP, new home sales, continuing claims, PCE prices, personal income and spending. That's a big deal. We'll see how that looks. We'll see how the sentiment looks. Then the next week we're into the non-farm payroll report. That'll be that Friday. Average work week, hourly earning, non-farm payroll. That's key. Factory orders, blah blah blah. Construction spending, consumer confidence. This is a big week. All right, so the end of the month, big week, and the Fed is on. Oh, it doesn't say it, but the Fed is going to be this week also. Is on Wednesday. So that's going to be a big week at the end of the month. So we have this week, and then next week we get a look. We can coast and pay attention to earnings, but next week is all going to hit the fan on January 30th. And we're starting off with PMI in Chicago and consumer confidence, and that's like Tuesday. So that'll be the week to actually pay some attention, and we shall see how it goes. No questions. Fantastic. All right, good. Oh, where was I going to go next? Oh yeah, we were going to talk about the portfolios a little bit. Let's see how futures are doing. The dollar came back. That was so obvious, though. I think I mentioned that during chat today. I said, you know, it's like, you know, you got to watch the dollar. If the dollar's getting stretched to like some silly level, and I point out because the yen had gone down because they said no tightening, and that was going to cause the dollar to bounce. Now the dollar bounced, and now the yen is what time is this? It's weird. Oh, it doesn't tell you what time exactly. Yeah, but the dollar started bouncing here as the yen came back up, and then it dragged the yen back down. But the Bank of Japan this morning said they weren't going to tighten anymore, and the yen fell significantly. Then, for whatever reason, it came back up, and it pushed the dollar down. And then the dollar said, "Well, screw this. I'm not 101.40 is too low," and so it started coming back up. Well, 101.50 is really too low, and that happened here too. So that's a good line to pay attention to. Look at Canada. Well, they do. Australia, I guess that's just a dollar wrecking everybody else because Australia fell too. You know, Europe fell a little bit, England fell a little bit. So the general consensus then is that the data we've had today is generally stronger for the dollar. It's more likely for the yen to keep going. So yesterday we talked about this is, by the way, this China thing's a really big deal. It's very significant and very difficult to change a trend when deaths outnumber births by a significant amount, and there were 10% more deaths than there were births in China. That's not good. You have people are aging, and they said just like we have an aging population. We have the same problem, but it hasn't gone as bad as China's gone already. And that's because China had that one-child policy for a long time, which caused very few new people to replace the old people. And at the same time, lifespans increased. So now you have a longer living aging population with very, very small amount of workers to support them. And then China at the same time was on it was interesting because they don't seem to be able to switch gears. That's kind of the problem with this planned economies is they didn't really think about what they were doing as the same policy. So what they did is they started building all these cities and building all these airports and building all these rail lines to connect everything together for their rapidly expanding population, but at the same time, they had the one-child policy that was aimed to stop their rapidly expanding population. So the one-child policy worked, but they were still building all these cities and all these towns and all these airports. That's why China has what they call ghost cities now. They have all these cities that were built that nobody lives in because the population stopped expanding. And most people, it turns out, don't want to just move out to the middle of nowhere and live in a city. That's what those are called Americans. It's what, America expanded kind of like what China's doing. Now, in America, what would happen is somebody would discover gold, or somebody would discover something that could be easily traded, or there was a good fur trade somewhere, or there was a good place like where the rivers met, like the Mississippi or something like that. There'd be places on the Mississippi, and all of a sudden the town would spring up. And then the rail would go through and they would build a rail line and the town would grow around the rail line. But it was always started like, it was often started by like a rich guy would build like five buildings and that would become a town. And then the town would like catch on and spread, right? But it was done organically, not by force and not by plan. And so there were various reasons. Like a lot of people were heading to California for the gold rush and things like that. And then along the way they found a place and they're like, this is so nice, I don't want to leave here. It's like, I like Billings, Montana. This is really beautiful. So they stayed in Billings, Montana. They stayed in Salt Lake City. They stay in Kansas City. People found these towns and started moving into them, and they start built up. And then they linked the towns by rail, and then Lincoln did the big. Well, it wasn't really, he finished it, but the Transcontinental Railroad was the project. Actually, I think Grant finished it. So they linked up the whole country by rail because the towns were all over the place, and they started linking them together bit by bit by bit. And then that started feeding into like the structure of how things develop. So it was kind of a natural thing that happened over the course of 100 years, and all these different places built up in what in a pattern. Now China said, well, we want to be like that. We want to have that kind of expansion in our country, but we want it planned out better. So they said, and that's the death right there. Well, as soon as you start thinking, but we want to plan it out better, that's not going to work. And so they started building a city here, an airport here, high-speed rail here, high-speed rail there. But it had nothing to do with where people wanted. They didn't ask the people, where do you want to live? They just started building places to live and then expected people to go there. It did not work. So China, and meanwhile, don't forget, they're spending trillions and trillions of dollars building these things. So they've got all this money that they spend, and they used to have this surplus of money. They now have a deficit just like we do, because they spent all their money and borrowed money to build an entire country that's empty. Because unlike Americans, and don't forget, what are Americans? Americans are people, I'm talking about 1850 Americans. Americans are people who either they or their parents or their grandparents left their country, and that's been true of America until the 1900s. That the people who are here are all from somewhere else, and even if you weren't the one that got on a boat and left, your family story is that getting on a boat and going thousands of miles away from home and starting a fresh life was a good thing that led to your family. So either they were the ones that did it, or they were the children, grandchildren, the ones that did it, and they were the type of people who would go out and start a new life somewhere else. They were predisposed to it. So America was an entire nation full of the kind of people who wanted to go out in the middle of nowhere and start a city and build a brand new life. China was not. They don't have that. You don't have it. So we had a pre-selected population of all the people in the world, the good old melting pot, right? Of all the people in the world, we got all the ones who wanted to go somewhere and start a new life. So when they landed on the East Coast or wherever they landed, they were happy to keep moving and go somewhere else. Even if it was a generation or two later, they would go and do something else. China did not count on that. They think, well, America did this, so we'll do this. It doesn't work that way because they didn't bother to make it, they didn't pick the right people. We just happen to have pre-selected the right crowd for that sort of experiment, to build the land and have people go out and settle. So on the whole, China's screwed. So they now have the lower population. There's also another demographic that's trying to stop the one-child policy a while ago, but the problem is you stopped it, but now they're into the problem where most developed nations is at this level of development and education and so on and so forth, most people are choosing to have only one child. That's why America is almost a population decline, Europe's a population decline, China's a population decline. It's because and this is true of any group of, any species, basically. When you expand to the point where you fill your environment, the species tend to slow down their population, their expansion of the population. It's a natural thing. You say, well, there's not enough resources here to have more people, so it stops becoming a desire for people. And so that's sort of genetic, that we all have that built into us. So anyway, so the bottom line is that China has an incredibly unsustainable problem with an aging population. And we're all going to suffer from this. So here's your newborns in China. Went from, in the 80s, right, was a huge amount, and it's declined. Now those newborns get older. Those newborns from 1980 by 2040 are in their 60s. So that's a problem. These kids are now these people. And that took a long time to fall off. So it won't be many, many years here. The working age population was these kids, right? Were coming in, filled up the working population here, but they're diminishing because the population starts diminishing. So now you have less and less and less people in the working population, but you still have all these old people to take care of. Now, God forbid we add 20 years to human life, and all these reds are going to go like this. So if all this reverse aging stuff that we talked about before, if that starts catching on and that starts working in China, how are you going to support these people with what? Goes back to the same thing, right? How do you support? Oh, well, we got rid of that. What did I do? Oh my God, what were we just looking at? Is it here? Yeah, okay. So it goes back to the national debt, right? What was the problem? How do you get revenue out of these people to make these people available to live? That's what we have in America right now too. How do we've got $3 trillion of Social Security and Medicare to take care of these people, and there's more and more and more of them. We look like this too. We look like we've got this many, we're gonna have this many and this many and this many and this many. And we're gonna have less and less workers to shoulder the burden. It's going to be a disaster everywhere, but it's going to be a disaster in China much sooner than expected, because what they thought was going to happen in 2025 is already happening here. It's happening now. They're ahead of the curve and falling fast. That's terrible. So, Oh, that's the other thing I forgot about. And the Republicans are now so aside from the fact that they want to do away with Social Security, they want to raid Social Security, whatever they can figure out to like stop this whole thing and not pay taxes, they're all for that. The funny thing is, in Georgia, the guy saying the congressman from Georgia is saying that people have been asking him how he can help them to work longer. They don't want to retire at 65. They want to keep working into their 70s. And that's his solution for fixing Social Security. So they're going to be pushing every possible way they can to take away Social Security. Bottom line, take away Social Security from people. I'm going to be 60 in March. I do not have to labor. I can't imagine if you're doing manual labor at my age and you have to every day get up and do stuff. I can't see how you do that past 65. It's got to be freaking exhausting. It's like torture. It really is. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to keep being a waiter and stand on your feet all day long from 65 to 75? It's crazy. Ugh. Talking about CEO pay and worker pay, blah, 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 whatever. Bad old chestnut, right? Here's our $700 a month portfolio. We're up 12.4% at the moment. That's good. How are we doing today? Let's see. See if it did any worse. You know, it's going to change, obviously, but portfolios down. Yep, 1% down. So, you know, it's going to move with the market, basically. But the bottom line is it's good, sensible stuff that we're pursuing. So I talked about that. We have the money to our portfolio. Again, lots of positions that are really good. Let's go back to this. Okay, so, you know, we do these portfolio reviews. And if you guys are, you know, if you're new here or whatever, you look at a position. This position is net neutral, right? The SOFI position. So how much is the position? It's it doesn't matter what we started with, it matters what it is right now. So right now it's 1688. By the way, you can always do better than these prices because these prices are not necessarily ideal. 1210 minus 157. So the net of this trade is $321. And the spread is 5 times 2 is $1,000. So it's $321 on a $1,000 spread that pays $1,000 at $5. And even today, which is a shitty day, well, I'm sorry, it's not necessarily true. SOFI. Oh, look how nicely oil came down. Yep, still doing well. So even today on a shitty day, it's actually up again. It's doing good because it's so undervalued. And so in 2 years, $321 becomes $1,000. You can make $679. So it's 679 divided by 321, 211%. So here's a position that will make 211% in 2 years, as long as SOFI doesn't fall below $5. Doesn't have to go up at all, just has to be flat or not down too much. In fact, as long as it doesn't drop 10%, you can do really, really well. So, you know, don't look at these portfolios and say, oh, there's an old position from 12-1. It doesn't apply anymore. Of course it applies. What matters is how much can you still make. And like I said, when you're in a portfolio, and you'll see this in your own portfolio, when your bid ask, well, here you go. Let's take a look. It's a SOFI 3.5. So we go to all products, we go to SOFI. And we're going to take the 2025-35 spread. So the threes, 340, 360. So let's call that 350, right? And the fives are 250, 260. So let's call it 260. All right, so it's 350 and 260. It's $1.10 for the spread. It's a very realistic price, exactly in the middle of the bid ask, and even erring on the side of caution for the bid ask on the fives. So what do we say? It's $1.10. It's 350 minus 260. No, what am I talking about? So 350. Yes, $1.10. Okay. No, it's not $1.10. Stop. It's 90 cents. 260 to 350 is 90 cents. So how much is this showing us? This is showing us, oh yeah, it's very well, it's fair. It's a little bit more than 90 cents. But you get my point. So these are generally going to be conservative numbers anyway, when you look at these. So if you look at that and you say you could do that and you could still make 200%, how is that not a good trade? So don't just stare at these things and wait for the next trades or something like that. Look through these portfolios and say, which of these things is still going to give us a good payoff? And it's a little, you can't go either to the percentages because the percentages don't tell you the whole story, because those, it's plus 18, minus 16, plus 18. It seems like it got away from you, but it really didn't, because it isn't that much. Now, our original price was, what is that, like about $225. We made $100 so far. So it was going to make 7 something. We already made 100. It's still going to make 6 something. It's still perfectly good. Like here, this one's only 1.2%. So you can see right away, it's one line item, 1.2%. Obviously still good for a new trade. And then we've got the CIM puts also. We've got AT&T. We just added to AT&T. And that's good. And see, here you go, minus 16% for the short calls. But that's actually good for you, because you're going to be able to sell the short call for more money than we sold the short call for. So this is now a better entry than we had on the last one we moved into. So there's plenty of ones that you can still trade. And the same thing goes here, Shearing Plow, not Shearing Plow. I was thinking Simon Property Group. So you have to look at the net of the trade over here and decide whether or not it's still worth playing or it's a good thing. So on the gold's at 19. We're aiming for 27. So and we have the $10 calls, and we sold the $27 calls, but we also have the short 20. So we have the 10-20 spread. So we're at the money for the main spread. The short January is 27 are going to expire, but this one I talked about anyway. And then this one I did more details because we're going to do the adjustments. So I talked about what we want to do here. The 27th will expire worthless. We'll keep the money. I was more bullish on gold than I was in May. We sold January calls. I was willing to risk being uncovered until the next show. So on the money talk portfolio, I can't make an adjustment now because we're between shows. I would have sold some 20s, but I'm not on the show, so I can't sell the 20s. But the smart move would have been to sell some 20s because we had these other guys expire. So this portfolio, I talk about stuff, but we can't do it. My hands are tied behind my back because we can only trade when we're on the show again. But here's Sophie again showing up because it's such a good trade. I did it whenever I had a chance. JP Morgan got through their earnings okay. Intel is coming down with the market. Logitech had a report. What did I say about Logitech? Oh, they guided down, so it's a good time to buy them. That's right. I see. I mean, this is what I write. So it's, they guided down, so it's a good time to buy them. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's Logitech. I don't know if I did into the exact same spread, but that's what we have chat for, by the way. So, but in Logitech, it's a 40-55 spread. So it's 15 times 20 is $30,000 spread. And even though we made a huge amount of money on it already, the net is 36.8 minus 17. Whoops. 17.5 minus 5,500, 55,000. 13.8. So it's 13.8 on a $30,000 spread. So this spread, if Logitech holds 55, it's at 55. So if it holds 55, this is a double from where it is now. And that's this year. That's in 1 year. So it's a 1 year, 100% gain. That's just as good as Sophie, which is a 2 year, 200% gain. Yeti today just got downgraded. So if you think you missed Yeti and you were worried about it, it just came crashing down because somebody gave them an analyst downgrade, which is annoying. So what happened today? So it went from 45 to 40, which is nasty, and now it's back up to 42. That's all today. But the point is, we know this. This is what you have to be reflexive about, because if you had been wanting to fill on Yeti and you didn't have a chance, you got a chance because some analyst badmouthed him. He still had a $47 price target, which is up here. But the analyst downgraded them to essentially a hold, I guess, because he said that they've basically realized most of their gains. Our target for 2 years is to get to 50. His 1 year target is 47. It's exactly what we want it to be. This isn't a problem for us. The guy agrees with my target. I don't have a problem with that. But people sell it out. So any kind of downgrade, that's all they look at, is to see if it's downgraded, and they start selling it. And then we did the short-term portfolio, which is where all the hedges are. And the bottom line of the short-term portfolio, again, if you want to hedge, this TZA hedge, which pays $1.2 million if the market falls 30%, and there's no margin at all involved in this thing. Okay, it's just a straight up bull call spread, no tricks. So this bull call spread is now, what is that, $45,000, and I guarantee you can do better if you actually trade it. But it's $45,000 on the $1.2 million spread. That's good protection. The DIAs also has no margin in it. That is $70,000 on a $250,000 spread. Excuse me. And in fact, DIA was 350. I'm sorry, it was at 343 when I was talking about it. This is yesterday. And now, sure. And now it's at 335. So it's already fallen considerably. Here's Coinbase. I talked about that. This is also one I'm very bullish on. And as you can see, it's not, it's up a bit. It's up about $9,000 or so on that one. We just added this new trade for UNG on the 10th, and that's already losing money. So again, great entry. So we'll see how that goes over time. And we already lost money on the original UNG trade. Now the other hedge we have is SQQ, and again, it's a question of this one's dead. Okay, that's expiring worthless. So then the net of $1.4 million here, and this is obviously $1.4 million here. So this spread is a net credit as it stands, and it's a $3.6 million hedge, I believe, right? SQQ, 3.6 million protection. So it's a credit with $3.6 million worth of protection on the SQQ. So that's how we're covering our long portfolios. So we're good all the way to a 30% drop. If the market falls 30%, we will get $5 million of protection. That's how this the short-term portfolio is set up. Those are our hedges. The next thing we're going to do over the next 2 days is review the bullish positions in the portfolios. But that means obviously we can go shopping, right? We're being, if you're being told that you can't lose money, that you're covered for $5 million, you can certainly go out and buy a couple of $1 million worth of longs. Just don't do stupid stuff. But if you buy conservative longs that only lose money, especially if you buy the kind of longs that only lose money if the market falls, like what was the SoFi position? The SoFi position cannot lose money unless SoFi drops 10%. It's not more, it would have to drop much more than 10% to really lose money. But if you assume, and again, SoFi is not the best example, but if it's a blue chip like IBM, like AT&T, so on and so forth, if you buy blue chip stocks and you position yourself so that you only lose money if the stock is below where it is now, I can still set up positions and make 100%, 200%. Only if they lose money, and if they lose money, you have to assume the entire market's going down. If the entire market is going down, these positions are going to make the money to cover it. And that's how we're going to play this. That's how we're going to play for the next foreseeable future. We're going to take very cautious, safe, in the money type positions on steady stocks like AT&T, like IBM, like whatever is on our watch list. And our watch list, I don't have it up here, do I? What are you? Somewhere I'm going to have my watch list. Phil's posts. These are Phil's posts. I agree with that concept. Is it 3 in? La 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 la. There's Wednesday, so it'd be the next Wednesday would be the watch list, I imagine. Which way Wednesday again? Was it 2? Wish I could remember when I do these things. There it is. It was 2. The one page I didn't look at. So we've got our watch list. And then we go and say, okay, so what are we looking for? I'm looking for blue chip type companies that we can set up a spread on. So here's ACAM is still cheap. Big Lots is not a blue chip, so we don't want them. BNTX, no. Berkshire, not really cheap enough. Citigroup, oh, there's a good one. Okay, they had their earnings already. So we're past the danger zone of the earnings. They're holding on okay. So that's a winner for adding. Cheesecake Factory, yep, I'm willing to add them. Caterpillar is too expensive right now. Capital One's not bad, but they haven't reported yet, so I'd want to wait. CIM, I always want to buy. Comcast, good one. Delta, good one. Disney, good one. eBay, yep, don't see why eBay would be having such a rough time. Expedia Travel, what do we just hear in the beige book, right? Travel and Leisure has been doing well. So why are they so low? Federal Express, not sure if that's good for a recession. Ford, I'm totally willing to take a chance down here. I mean, you already have them, by the way, but I mean, just saying. But this is what the watch list is for, right? I'm looking for blue chip type stocks that are still pretty cheap. GLW, I think they're cheap enough with devices. Generac, I like down here for sure. Google is definitely on. That's too cheap still. Honeywell's just coming back. Why do I have 2 Honeywell charts? No, that should be an IBM chart. International Papers down here, we were watching them. Somebody just asked me about those guys. And again, that's exactly what I'm looking for, right? Jack in the Box, no, they're spending money on expansion, might be the wrong time to do it. Oh, Nordstrom's, no. Retail, All right. Biotech ETF, no thank you. Levi's, yep, absolutely. Logitech, we already have it. That's a good one. Lovesac, I love them down here. Not a blue chip, of course, but you know, they're going to be that price and I'm looking for something it's worth taking a look at. Here's Meta, Facebook, so that's good at that price. We already have them. Moderna, I think is too cheap too still, but not, you know, I don't know if I'd take a chance if I was going to fill a portfolio. Here's Micron, very cheap right now. And I still got to finish up this list, and I really got to get that done this week. So that's it. Very simple system, right? You look at your portfolios, you identify what you need to fill them up. You look at, and also don't forget, what did we do? We looked at the hedges first. And I said, well, I've got these hedges, and how are they going to work? Well, they're going to absolutely make me a ton of money if the market goes in any way down. So therefore, I've got a free ticket to buy stocks, but I said, don't forget, if the market goes down, and what part of the market, by the way, the NASDAQ. So really, I'm going to be looking for NASDAQ stocks that are kind of blue chips because it's almost like a free stock. It's like it can't hurt me. Like Comcast, it can't really hurt me. Comcast, a NASDAQ stock, if it goes down, it's almost certainly because the entire NASDAQ is going down. It's not likely to go down just because of their bad actions. Anybody can. This is why we diversify. But so it's the kind of stock I want to be adding into the portfolio, because I can add it in a way that I can only lose money if it goes lower. And if it goes lower, the chances are the entire NASDAQ is lower. And if the entire NASDAQ is lower, it's good. Facebook, we just said, was good, right? That's in the NASDAQ also. Google in the NASDAQ also, right? So you want to go Google, Facebook, Comcast, Lovesac is now, well, Lovesac's in the NASDAQ. So now starting to pick stocks that are in the NASDAQ that we've been looking for, that are low in the channel, that are already on my watch list because they're a good value, that are going to be stocks. And then it's going to come down to which ones look very attractive when I look at the option chains and say, who's going to pay me the craziest amounts of money for just staying flat? And there you go. Then I can start deploying some of my cash and moving to the side. Why? Because I've got massive amounts of coverage. And if I don't need the protection, if I look at my portfolio, when I finish a portfolio and I look at the portfolio and I say, well, I've got so much coverage and I only have this much risk. Therefore, I don't need all the risk. So I can either reduce my coverage, which I'm not inclined to do, or I could increase my risk. I almost have a free pass to increase my risk. Now, I'm not going to do it willy-nilly because there's no sense in having, if I think the market's going to go down and I don't have a lot of risk, which is how we set ourselves up on purpose coming into Q1, I thought we might fail. I thought things might go badly in Q1. So we are set up to make money in a down market right now. If I go too crazy buying bullish positions, we will no longer make money. We'll maybe be neutral. I don't want to be neutral. I want to make money on the downturn, then cash in, then buy stuff that's really cheap. That's ideally what I'd like to do. So I'm not in a huge hurry to add stuff, but just in case things get away, I might want to add some more things that we don't have. So we're going to look very carefully at these positions and see which ones that would be a good enhancement to the portfolio. Oh, all right. Still no questions. Went through the whole thing with no questions. I hope people can hear me because we're done. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and we will do this again next week. All right. Take care, everybody.